Morn's shipment of Livanian beets has been sitting in Cargo Bay 3 for over 2 weeks, and it's starting to rot. Morn was an excellent sparring partner for Worf, and Jadzia Dax had a crush on Morn, but he wasn't interested. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine, Season 6, Episode 12, entitled Who Mourns for Morn, with very special guest, writer Mark O'Connell. Hello, Mark.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, welcome.
This episode was directed by Victor Lobo, written by, of course, Mark O'Connell. What a coincidence. And this was February 4th, 1998. This is going to be a fun one. Let's do it.
Mark, how do you pronounce your middle name?
Eugene.
Garat?
Yeah,
I forgot.
Eugene, maybe you've heard of it, Cirroc. Eugene.
Yeah, I've heard of that, but that's pretty easy because it says here Garrett.
Right.
Okay, I'll briefly explain. Back then, when I was doing my writing for DS9 in the 90s, in my first marriage, I had taken my wife's name, so I was Mark Garrett O'Connell. These days, I'm back to just Mark O'Connell. So.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I meant to explain that right away, but that's kind of important.
Well, it's good to understand why there's a distinction. I'm sure there's a lot of Mark O'Connells. It's kind of it's not a rarity of a name. So just to distinguish, I just wanted to make sure because they do distinguish here. But yeah, this was a fun episode. This was a fun episode, Mark. I'm glad to have you here so we can get into discussing it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I had a ball writing the episode. I just watched it again shortly before we got together here, and I was glad to see that it still made me laugh just as much as it used to. It's got some good stuff in it.
You know, it's interesting because it's one of those, fairly rare comedic episodes, and certainly a bottle episode. But this isn't the first episode that you've written. That was actually the fourth, which is really interesting and some very notable ones. For the Cause, you had also written. That is when it's an episode with Eddington. It's when Cassidy Yates betrays Sisko. There was also Meridian, which is when you attempted to do the hardest thing, I think, in television writing, which is convince us that two people fell in love in two scenes, which is just so hard to do. And I can't. What was the first one? I forgot.
Second Sight.
Second Sight, great one with Nanav Visitor, where she is a Cardassian, right?
No, Second Sight is Ben Sisko's first love.
Right. Sorry, I was thinking of Second Skin.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Second Sight is Sisko falls in love with a woman who isn't really there. She turns out to be a psychoprojective telepath, which is one of my favorite made-up science fiction words ever. A psychoprojective telepath. Wow.
Sounds like a song.
Yeah. But also, I was involved in one episode of Next Generation. I didn't get my name in the credits because my contribution was so tiny that the Writers Guild didn't even have a category for it. I had pitched some stories to Brannon Braga. He liked one of them. A week or two later, he called me up in a panic and he said, Mark, Mike Pillar just threw away our script for next week. We need a script in like 24 hours and we want to use your story. And I said, hey, great, let's do it. So he did. So Brannon wrote the script in 24 hours and he said, sorry, we would love to hire you to write the script, but we would never put a freelancer in this kind of a vice to try to get an actual script.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, looks like we lost you for a second there, Mark. Sure. That's too bad because he's probably telling us which episode it is right now. we're waiting the whole time. We're like
hours.
Oh, we lost you for a second there, Mark.
Dang it. It's telling me my connection's unstable. Okay, you got me back?
Yeah, you're back. But we've got to know, we lost you for a few seconds. What was that episode?
Timescape.
Now, all of the Star Trek fans are like, oh my God, Timescape. And I'm like, I don't remember which one that is. Which one is that?
Well, it was a bottle show, and it was based on a really simple. I like puzzle shows. I like puzzle episodes. So this was a bottle show and a puzzle show, and basically Picard and Geordi and Troy and Data are returning via shuttlecraft to the Enterprise from a conference they attended. And when they get to the Enterprise, they find that it's locked in battle with a Romulan ship. But both ships are in suspended animation. But to complicate things, they froze just at the instant the Romulans fired the kill shot.
Yeah.
So they're faced with this puzzle of trying to get time moving again without that kill shot destroying the Enterprise in the process.
Remember that? Super fun.
That's the one.
Very cool. And this episode, Who Mourns for Morn, was, to me, actually a little bit reminiscent of the, I don't know if it's got a genre type, but it reminded me of the Self-Sealing Stem Bolts episode with Cirroc and Aron, or the one where Jake and Nog are trying to get the Willie Mays baseball card. Like one of these episodes where, you're going to this place and then to this place, and they're trying to figure this thing out, and the plot is unraveling bit by bit, and it's funny, it's comedic, it's stressful, and it just kind of had that kind of feel to me. Were any of the previous episodes of Next Generation or Deep Space Nine kind of like influences on writing this episode?
Actually, no. I'll tell you what the influence was, and this might make you laugh, but the way I first pitched this story to the staff was...
Let me jump in there real quick. I want to guess before you say.
Oh, good,
Yeah,
good. Exciting.
I want to make a guess. So when I was watching the episode, I felt a Western feel. So that's my guess. Is there a Western origin to the story?
No.
Mobster.
Sorry about that.
Hey, it was a guess. That's why I wanted to guess, at least, before the fact.
Right now,
it was a
everybody
fair
in the
guess,
live
though.
chat, make your guesses now.
Right. So tell us. Sorry, Mark. Sorry.
I pitched it as Citizen Kane in outer space.
Okay.
That's what sold it. And the background to that is, Cirroc, I'm sure you're aware of this. Morn was a very popular character on the show, despite the fact that he never spoke, he never did anything. I mean, he just never did anything. But he was such a funny running joke on the show that a lot of writers, including the staff writers, the producers, a lot of writers really wanted to and tried to do stories about Worf. I mean Morn, sorry, not Worf. And but there were these two huge stumbling blocks with doing a Morn story, and one was his face isn't articulated, so he can't actually speak. And I knew I've been involved with the show long enough to know that there was no way Paramount would pay for a new articulated mask for Mark Shepard, the actor playing Morn. And I knew they also wouldn't pay him extra for reciting dialogue, So you're basically faced with, how do you do a story about a character who isn't going to talk and whose face can't move, basically? And I just had this brainstorm one day of, there's only one way to tell a Morn story: kill Morn off at the first scene.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I latched onto that, I realized that this story could have a lot of parallels to Citizen Kane, which I don't want to bore people with a recap, but basically Citizen Kane is like tracing a guy's life through flashbacks. And I thought this would be such a fun way to give Morn an episode, is to have him die in the teaser, and then we learn about who Morn really is over the course of the episode as Quark digs into his past, because Quark ends up, as sole beneficiary of Morn's will. So that's how the story came together, and that's how I pitched it: Citizen Kane in outer space, and the producers loved it. It was like the perfect Morn story.
Yeah.
But they immediately changed the story, which of course happens.
What was the original pitch? I mean, like what was changed from the original to how they flipped it?
The big thing that changed was in my original pitch, and unfortunately, I have copies of virtually everything I've ever written, but I can't find the copy of that original pitch. But the big thing in the original pitch that I put together was that Morn turned out to be not only a famous and powerful politician, but sort of a galactic emperor and a man of just immense power and wealth and influence, who had just been slumming it at Deep Space Nine at Quark's bar for a while, because just to get away from all the hassle of being such a powerful person.
It's because he's such a smooth talker, that guy.
Exactly. So and that fit into the whole Citizen Kane thing. Also, it's finding out that Citizen Kane, well, he's responsible for this and for that. So I thought that all worked for Who Mourns for Morn. But then I'm not sure who did this work on the story. I always assume it was Ira Bear, because I think he's the one who told me what was going to happen. Ira was a great guy to work with, by the way. I loved working with Ira.
Really?
And so he said, here's what we want you to do with the story, Mark. Instead of Citizen Kane in space, we want you to do Charade in space. All right. Are either of you familiar with the movie Charade with Audrey Hepburn and I believe Cary Grant?
I thought you just meant because he doesn't speak.
Oh no, it's an actual movie. It's an actual caper movie from the 60s. It's this lighthearted romantic comedy caper movie with Audrey Hepburn and Cary Grant, and it's super simple story. Audrey Hepburn's husband dies under mysterious circumstances. All these strange people start showing up at his funeral, and they start stalking her. And she eventually learns that her husband was actually a crook and had been the mastermind of this huge heist, but he had hidden the loot. And all these creepy people who were starting to appear in her life were part of his gang, and they were all after the loot, and they all just assumed that Audrey knew where it was.
Okay.
So that's the story we ended up doing with Who Mourns for Morn, which you're aware of now. But that's how it got its start. We switched from Citizen Kane to Charade. And the funny thing is, though, I had forgotten this, but when I watched the episode again just now, I realized that the version that I had pitched, where Morn turns out to be a prince and a king and an emperor of the entire galaxy, we did use a little of that in the closing scenes of Who Mourns for Morn. There are a couple of minutes when they're trying to pass Morn off as this galactic emperor and a prince.
Right.
So part of the original story did sort of make it onto the final draft.
It did.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It did.
Well, that's really cool, because when you mentioned that, I remember them saying, "Oh, the royal family has bequeathed him with whatever this and that."
Right.
And then as a viewer, you believe it. You go, "Oh, interesting twist," and then it twists again. But then I'd like to look at it through Cirroc's eyes a lot of times, because I haven't seen this in a while, but I've still seen it, so I kind of know what's coming. Cirroc, were you just along for the ride, or did you kind of know what to expect or guess anything?
I was along for the ride. I didn't know what to expect. I guess at some point I thought Odo knew more than what he actually did. I thought he was like part of the end game, like we played a trick on you. So no, I was constantly like, okay, where's this going to go? Where is this going to go? When L'Rell pops out of the mud bath, I'm thinking, okay.
Which looked like hot chocolate, by the way. Looked delicious.
Yeah, I was like, well, how come I wasn't invited to the set that day? So yeah, as I was watching the story, I kind of didn't know where it was going. And part of me felt like once it was revealed about the heist, that's when I felt like, oh, is this like a Western that I've seen before? Is this like the good, the bad, and the ugly? Is this one of those kinds of movies where, it's all about this, this heist and, who's going to end up with the bag at the end? so that's where my kind of imagination went, Mark, when I guessed Western. But I really like the fact that this works, in my opinion, because Armin is such a good actor.
Yeah.
And it just, he's carrying the entire weight of the story. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much, based on him, and he's done this before. We've seen him do this before, mm-hmm. usually to give other actors a break. Like, hey, you guys take the night off. Armin will do it this week. So, mm-hmm. And he's capable, very capable, which is, this is an example of it to me. And he doesn't even have some of the usual kind of crutches that somebody would have, which is their other co-stars and stuff. He's kind of on his own in this a lot, and bringing in new guest stars. So you have the guest star aliens, you have the guest star woman character, you have the guest star guy who was supposed to be part of the law enforcement. I like the line where he says, "Well, as soon as we walk you over to security and fill out some paperwork, it made it sound legit, made it sound like he was really undercover or something." So I actually like that, the dialogue there. But yes, ultimately I want to just, give the credit to Armin for being able to carry these kinds of stories that are, bottle episodes that are introducing new guest stars, and he still brings that kind of energy to it. Mm-hmm. He brings that bounce and keeps the roll going. So the pace was really nice to me. But I think the best part was that I didn't know where it came from. So I've never watched Charade, Mark, so I don't know the origin of the story. Mm-hmm. And I think part of it was like me trying to figure out, have I seen this before? Where have I seen this kind of a concept? And also, I don't know where it's going to happen. So it kind of left me guessing it. Ryan, you saw it before, but I didn't know what was going to happen. But one of my big questions as I was watching the episode was, who has that painting that's behind you, Ryan? The painting that they used for Morn's funeral.
Yeah.
It was curious to me, just like where did that end up? Who has that in their possession? That painting would be pretty cool to have.
It sure would be. I assume it's the same person who painted the Matador painting in Morn's quarters.
Yeah, it got torn up.
Right.
The black velvet painting, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another clever idea with the microchip kind of thing being hidden in the art. I like when stories kind of go in that way, where it's an unexpected thing. It's like him getting hit over the head leads to the next thing, and it was kind of like I really like treasure hunt movies and things about treasures and maps and Indiana Jones type of stuff. Yeah. And so they played on that kind of childlike, thing inside of me that really likes those kinds of stories where, they have this treasure map and they're trying to figure out where the gold is, or, King Solomon's mines and all of these kinds of, where is the gold? Where is the treasure hidden? And I like those kinds of movies as well. So another aspect of this episode that I like.
Cirroc, that's the genre I was trying to think of earlier. That's what it is. It's a treasure hunt kind of episode where, you're unraveling this and you're piecing this mystery together and they're trying to get whatever that thing is. And while I was watching, I was thinking, Mark, was this the kind of episode, as you're writing it, that you're making yourself laugh when you're picturing it? Because a lot of times you can kind of picture it and it's making you laugh the more you're thinking about it. Or was it something that just kind of became more funny when you actually saw it?
Option one. I was definitely going for cracking myself up as I wrote it, and that was easy to do. I wouldn't say that I always write that way, but in this case, it was fairly easy to do because I was able to see and hear in my head how these actors would deliver these lines and how they would create these moments, and that was a big part of why I was laughing so much while I was writing the story, because I could be like, oh, I can so see Renee doing this bit. It's going to be so perfect. You know, and watching it again this morning, there were a couple of moments that really gave me that feeling again. It really jumped out at me. And one was the scene where Quark has just figured out that he's really going to be rich fairly soon. And there's just a scene of him like walking down the corridor, walking down the hallway. He's got a real spring in his step, and all of a sudden he jumps up and clicks his heels. Yeah. It's such a perfect moment. That just cracked me up. And that final scene where Morn reappears, and really Quark has to make us believe that he's actually having a conversation with someone who doesn't speak. So Quark has to fill in both sides of the conversation, and he does it flawlessly. It's amazing. Mm. That guy was Armin Shimmerman, man. He was a wonder.
Yeah. Really, really set the tone for this episode. Another thing, there were moments that I liked. I liked the hologram Morn to begin with, and Odo, and that whole exchange between the two of them about the hologram. Uh-huh. You know, how he's good for business, and when he's not around, he's, you know, I lose 5% in my sales. I love that dialogue. Really like the exchange between Dax and Worf, where Dax says, you know, I had a crush on him, you know.
and Worf can't let it go.
Yeah, what do you mean he wasn't interested? I laughed on that one. I thought that, because he was just like, wait a minute, about this Morn thing. And Sisko was in it very little, but there was such gravitas to the way he said turn it off when he walks into the quarters, and he tells Quark to turn off the hologram. But the way he says it is like when your dad tells you something, and this is the final warning type thing. And I felt that kind of tone in his voice when he said it. It was like, oh, hurry up and turn it off. So I really, even though it was just three words, he just delivers lines like that where it's like, wow, this guy's here, and clearly he's the captain and the authoritative figure around here.
We only have a minute before we got to go to our break, but real quick, I just want to jump on that. And I'm glad you brought up Sisko there, because I feel like it might be kind of a novice move for an actor to think, oh, this is a comedic episode, I need to act more comedic, for example. But an actor like, obviously, Avery Brooks knows, hey, the writer knows what my character is going to act like. I don't need to ham it up unless it's called for. So he's still acting like Sisko. He's not acting like funny Sisko. Conversely, Rene Auberjonois is being funny because that's how it's written. He's having the time of his life, Odo is. And we'll take our break here, but definitely want to talk about the acting. Also, Mark Allen Shepard, the actor that portrays Morn throughout the entire series, was actually in this episode, not in his Morn garb. And I might even do a Morn impression. I've been practicing. But so everybody, if you know where he was, say it now, because we're going to give it away. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule.
Oh, man.